Today is September 20th, and I was talking about my commute and move to Washington State and how my license was suspended illegally. And the next thing that happened is I was trying to get FOIA from the FBI. I sent several requests in writing. They sent a lot of responses back. Well, first I was ignored. Then they sent several written responses back, sort of mocking me, making small adjustments to my identity here and there to give excuses for why they were not finding anything about me, supposedly. And in the meantime, I was being assaulted with the military technology. The media were not responsive at all. I told them I had a story about the FBI, finally, because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I had emailed every FBI office in the entire United States, and by the time about 9 months had passed from the time that I met the special supervisory agents, it had been 1 year since this incident had occurred with the FBI. And I hadn't received any FOIA. I was being ignored. The FBI SSAs who said that, I could talk to them at any time and add information or they would get back to me, they didn't. They quit responding after they told me that they would be responding. And so I found myself having to try to resort to the media. And every media chain that I called, I really felt that somehow it was like some individuals knew what was going on already. And how they knew now makes sense. If I have microchips implanted in my body and I'm under surveillance of some kind, someone passes that information around, it's not going to be hard to get that information out to the people who you already have in certain agencies that you feel confident sharing something top secret with. It's also not going to be very hard to get a hold of somebody in the media, because there are people in the media who work for various intelligence agencies. And because it's such an information heavy source or a job, and you are receiving so much information, of course the media is going to have people who are intelligence. I don't mean intelligent, and there are intelligent ones as well, but I mean who are spies. So I don't know exactly what the problem was, but I finally got a hold of a media group that told me they would take the story if it got picked up by a smaller newspaper. So basically they were saying if you get a smaller paper, local paper, to pick it up, then sometimes, to take your story, then sometimes the larger media will read that story and they'll pick it up. And sometimes things can go from there. So that was what I then hoped for. And what did I want out of it? Was I trying to smear the FBI or trying to ruin a couple of individuals' lives? No. That wasn't at all why I was going to the media. I was going to the media because I was being called drug seeking, and I was being stalked, and I'd had all this vandalism, and I'd been told I couldn't report the various crimes to the FBI and the police, and And I needed that FOIA. I knew instinctively, I was having tons of migraines too. I don't know how I knew I needed to get a hold of that FOIA. I knew instinctively I'd been defamed because of the way police were suddenly treating me, sort of openly. I mean, just even passing me and mocking me, like, it was strange. It was like a lot of officers knew who I was, suddenly. And whereas before they stayed in the background and maybe a few of them had done some bad things, after I was trapped in Washington and my lawsuits were going out from under me because of that, the harassment was becoming more obvious, and it was very clear to me that I had been defamed. So I tried to get the records. Finally, I found somebody, a Hispanic man, through the Wenatchee World newspaper, who said he would take my story. So we made an appointment date. We had a date set when I was going to meet with him at the Wenatchee World offices and give him the story. And I talked with him on the phone. He said he was interested. So he was going to do his, listen to me and record what I said and take notes, and then probably publish it. There was really no reason not to publish it because it was an interesting story. And it did involve the FBI, and most people in the public are interested in something like that. So I had that scheduled, and then at the same time, I think because my grandparents were being harassed by this law firm and being told not to help me in any way, my grandmother too was trying to help her at the time. And because I'm not sure if she was somewhat moody because she was getting older, and some people said that she was getting dementia or Alzheimer's or something. I'm not sure if it was that. I'm not sure if she was being tortured herself, and so it was escalating her moods, and that's very possible, even though it doesn't seem like a possibility. It is possible. It's possible that even some of her excruciating pain that she had was not exactly just because, not from natural causes, but it could have been because of military causes, and I've discovered that she has been targeted in the past. I didn't at all think so at the time, though. So, for whatever reason, we weren't getting along very well, and I wanted to move some more of my boxes out so that I could continue working on my lawsuits. And boxes with some legal papers. I wanted to get a couple of things. And at that point, I needed to mail some things and send some documents off because my lawsuits had not been finalized, at least one of them had not, and I was still trying to work on it. And I had already gone with a friend one time to get a police assist, quote unquote, what they call police assist. Police go with you to the residence. They just make sure, they just basically are keepers of the peace, make sure there's no problem, and then you pick up your items. And the only reason I asked for a police assist with my cousin one time was just because sometimes she was somewhat physical when she was getting really upset. And I just wanted to grab a couple things and then leave and not have a problem. And so the first time we did that, it was no problem at all. Nobody felt threatened by police. She knew that I wasn't reporting anything about anybody. Of course not. And I was just getting some belongings. So the first time that happened, it was 2 officers and I didn't have a problem. But I think that I didn't have a problem because I had a witness with me and it was a cousin. The second time that I asked for the police assist, it was the night before that I had the appointment scheduled to talk to the media about the FBI. I am positive that the FBI knew that was happening. I'm positive that the police knew this was happening as well. So when I asked for a police assist to get some of my belongings, I think that they premeditated and planned what they were going to do ahead of time. I believe that they saw that as an opportunity to try to come up with some excuse for putting me in jail or getting rid of me so that they could keep me from meeting this reporter and talking to him about what was going on. So instead of being met by police to pick up some belongings, I had police come to my house, or where I was staying at the time. 3 of them, 3 officers. One was a Hispanic man, and then there were 2 women, 2 female officers. One was a little older, the other one was younger. The younger one was extremely vicious. She made it very clear she hated my guts. She was taking great pleasure in what she was doing. And the other 2, I'm sure they felt the same way, because they didn't stand up for me in any way. They didn't hold her back. And they were, all 3 of them were part of that. All 3 of them were in on it, so to speak. There's no reason why one of them couldn't have said, we don't have any cause to do this. What they did is they showed up at my door and they said, you're under arrest. I mean, I was stunned. I didn't even know what to say. And then I said, for what? And they said, for assaulting your grandmother. And I had not assaulted my grandmother. I could not. It was the biggest. It was suddenly like seeing a horror movie flashing up before your eyes, and you just can't believe you're part of it. I was pregnant at the time, and I knew I was pregnant. By then I'd already done the test, and I knew that it was positive, and I already had all the signs and symptoms. And I had never assaulted or physically harmed anybody my entire life. I had never done that with my grandma. Even though she had done some kind of wacky things, I was always sort of running out of the house just to get away. I never stood around or tried to defend myself against my elderly granny. I mean, that was not something that I even wanted to do. Even if she got upset and she started yelling or was in a bad mood, I just left. And that's, I don't thrive on... I've never been physically violent with anyone. So... So this whole thing came up, and there were no, basically the police, I had an argument with my grandmother, or she was yelling at me and that kind of thing, which is why I asked for the police assist, because I thought, oh no, it's going to be one of these things again. So I thought, I just need to get some of my belongings. And I asked for them to come up because I didn't want there to be a problem. There wasn't a problem at the time. It was just that I didn't want it to escalate. So, since it had been fine the first time that I did that, I asked for that again. I expected absolutely no problems whatsoever. And instead, I had police making up a report. My grandmother, I think, was possibly afraid that I was trying to report her for something because she went after me with like a broom and did a few other things. So I don't know if she thought that she was getting reported and it scared her to see the police. I also don't know if possibly somebody or all 3 of the police intimidated her or my family or whoever was there to meet them and pressured them to do something. I know that my Uncle Lauren had tried to hold me or physically restrain me in the house a couple of times when I was trying to leave the kitchen, because he started, he was the trustee of my grandparents' will, and when I sort of saved my granny's life, and she said that she was telling me that she wanted to make an adjustment in the will. And I believe I said that to a couple people. I mean, I wouldn't have said it to my cousins or talked about it a lot. I maybe said it to 1 or 2 individuals. And I didn't know because I didn't know what trustee meant. And I was trying to find out, well, what would she maybe be talking about? So I found out she wanted to make me in charge of some part of the will for her. She and my grandfather could make their own decisions for themselves.